timing is absolutely critical. Where are you about in the market cycle? Are you paying top tier pricing? Is everyone FOMOing in for these assets? Does everyone want to own these types of deals? And if that's the case, you have to be cautious. You have to be careful. And it may be a time to not be buying. Hey, you guys, welcome to another episode of Keeping It Real Estate. I'm Dan Brisse. Today, you guys, I want to give you a full picture of the real estate market, the most exciting time we've seen, the most opportunistic time we've been in the history of Granite Towers. And I'm going to tell you exactly why. And I'm going to tell you what we're watching out for, after 450 million of assets under management, doing 30 deals. Bought my first property, if you're new to us, back in 2012. I bought a duplex and a 9-plex and a 24 unit deal. And then we continued to buy, raise capital in a professional manner, started Granite Towers Equity Group, brought a 45 unit, then an 86 unit, 100 units, and kept going. And as of today, we got a little over 3,000 units, 450 million of assets under management, and 195 million of equity under management. And I only share that to you because if I'm listening to folks, the first question I'm always asking is, why would I listen to you? Who are you that I should actually listen to you? My background, I was a professional snowboarder, and I always kind of found it interesting that you've got all these coaches that are teaching and telling you how to do these tricks, but yet the coaches have never done the tricks. So I always had a little bit of challenge there when someone's telling you how to do something, but they've never done it in their life. And so my word to you is that we are in this industry. This is what we do. This is all we do. And, we've been through some really great times, had incredible returns. We've been through some really challenging times like the last 5 years. And we're starting to see some of the best opportunities come back into the market right now. And that's what I want to talk about today. So quick review, 2015 to 2021 was this really nice run up. 2021 market peaks, Fed raises rates. A lot of people that bought between 2020 and early 22 used variable rate bridge debt. And that variable rate bridge debt is not that much different than the great financial crisis, back in 2005, 2006, 2007, where a lot of these first-time home buyers were buying deals or buying homes, and they were using variable rate debt. And as rates ran, these folks got stuck in these homes, lost their homes, couldn't pay for it, and we had the great financial crisis. Fast forward to 21 and 22, that happened in the commercial multifamily space. And so right now, we're starting to see a lot of distress in the market. It actually started last year already, but we're seeing these deals come to market where these owners are forced to sell. And like I've said in previous episodes, if you're forced to sell, you're never taking top tier pricing. You're taking bottom of the barrel pricing, and it's generally blood in the streets. And if you're a buyer, it's the most exciting opportunistic time because you're seeing these huge discounts. And, like I said, we're in the market. We are doing this. We're currently buying a 229 unit deal located in Plano, Texas. And you guys, the thing I want to teach you today, firsthand experience, this may be the most valuable thing I can tell you guys in any podcast I've ever been on when I look at the history of our deals. And there's two things, only two, that really differentiate returns and the ability to create exponential returns for your investors. And number one of that is your timing. And I know that doesn't sound like much. You're like, what, timing? But the timing of a purchase dictates where you are in the cycle. Every asset class cycles, I've talked about this a lot, and the cycle is extremely powerful. It's like a surfer that's riding a wave. If you get on the wave at the very end and you're at the peak and you're riding high and the wave is powerful and then it crashes into the ocean, that's kind of similar to how the real estate cycle wave crashed in 21 and early 22 when the Fed raised rates. Folks that were buying were riding this really high wave, right? They probably have been buying a couple deals for the previous 3 or 5 or 7 years and had some really great returns. And as those returns compounded, the investors created more trust and continued to pile their bigger gains back into every deal looking for depreciation. Then the Fed raises rates and the music stops and these deals come crashing down. And there's a lot of foreclosure happening in the market right now, purely due to over-leveraged bridge debt. So timing is absolutely critical. Where are you about in the market cycle? Are you paying top tier pricing? Is everyone FOMOing in for these assets? Does everyone want to own these types of deals? And if that's the case, you have to be cautious. You have to be careful. And it may be a time to not be buying, to be on the sidelines, truly pencils down. Where else can you be upgrading your business? Can you improve on asset management, property management? Is there a construction arm? Is there something else in the real estate world that you should be spending your time on instead of chasing new deals? That's number one, is timing. Number two, and it's obvious, you've heard it a lot, but I can't stress it enough, is location. If you can tell me right now, hey, I bought this deal and I can verify the location and you tell me what year it was bought in, I can pretty much tell you the returns. I can pretty much tell you how the deal is doing. And that's purely because these cycles are so powerful and the timing is so powerful. The price prediction per door is so powerful. And then the location is the other big denominator of the factor, because whatever location you have, that dictates who your customer is. That dictates who's in your buildings and their core values, what they're built on, how they're going to handle themselves during challenging times, what they're going to be like during good times, what they're going to be like on a month-to-month basis, what matters to them. That will be shown in your P&L, your profit and loss statement. And that comes through delinquency. I'll tell you guys a story right now of a deal we bought in 2021 at the peak of the market. Number one, our timing was bad. Number two, we bought a location that had a very challenged demographic. And so if you guys remember back during COVID, they had this thing where they had help, COVID money, basically saying, we will help you pay your rent. And it put a Band-Aid on a lot of residents' income to keep them in their units, which was great. I understand, you lock the world down, people stop working, all of a sudden their income stops. How do you still keep people in their units and don't have landlords literally having to evict everyone in their apartment building? They started to create COVID money and started to help pay for rent. Well, when COVID left, 2 years later, and the COVID money ran out, in these tough locations, these residents now had new habits. And these new habits were, I don't pay my rent anymore. I don't have to pay my rent anymore. And it created very bad habits for certain tenant profiles and demographics where instead of going to work to figure out how to pay for rent, they stayed home and figured out how not to pay for rent and to still stay in their unit. And that's a very slippery slope. It's a very dangerous place to be, and it's very challenging to be as a landlord. And so the lesson that will not be learned again, and I'd strongly advise you really take this to heart, is these two lessons. Number one, where are you in the market cycle about? If you do not understand cycles, I'm going to suggest a phenomenal book by Edward Dewey called Cycles. Talks about the real estate cycle in the US and how it's been cycling for the last couple 100, 250, 300 years. And you can see about where you are in the real estate cycle. Does that mean it's exact? Does that mean you put everything in and say, okay, we've bottomed in 2026, I'm investing everything? No, it doesn't mean that. But it does mean, hey, we have an idea based off the real-time data. And of course, you're constantly assessing the data. What are we seeing today? Does what we see today stack up to support where we are about in the cycle? Here's an example of how we read the data based off of timing and based off of cycles. So back in 21, like I've shared, interest rates were zero or near zero. People who are buying real estate are using variable rate bridge debt. So it's max leverage with very low rates, and the rate is a variable, so it can fluctuate. Fed has to raise rates because inflation is very high after coming out of COVID, because they print trillions and trillions of dollars, which again is the definition of inflation. And in inflationary time, the people who are hurt the most are on fixed incomes, salaries, W-2s, pensions, 401ks, IRAs, Social Security. That stuff really hurts as they're printing so much currency. And so as this market is changing, what we noticed is during that period of very, very, very low interest rates and very high rents, because rents were going up 10, 15, 20% per lease, a lot of new units were being built. And so the new construction for new units was through the roof. Well, if you fast forward, it takes a couple years, 2 or 3 years, to bring those deals from the ground to the market. And so in 2023, 2024, early 2025, all of this glut of supply is hitting. And you can see the new starts. You can see the new units brought online. There's data for all of this. And as you're watching the data of seeing how many units are hitting, and we're just going to talk about Dallas because that's the market we're focused on, you can see an incredible amount of new units hitting the market in 2023, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4, into 2024 and into 2025. And when this massive glut of supply is hitting these major markets, they're just not being absorbed fast enough. And let's just think Very common sense matter of fact here. When you've got a ton of units that hit the market, it creates a lot of opportunity and options for the tenant profile. And if that submarket doesn't have enough population growth, now you have more choices for more residents to go shop around and find the best deals. What does that do to rent? What does that do to vacancy? That brings rent levels down because all of the landlords are now fighting for a limited number of people wanting to get these leases. So they start to lower their rent. Vacancies start to go up. So I'm just giving you a look at the cycle of the data we're looking at. Okay. So hang with me here. All the new product gets built. New supply hits. All of a sudden, there's many, many more options. People start to go shop around because who wouldn't? Heck, I'm gonna. I remember when I was renting an apartment, I went and shopped 4 or 5 competitors and I figured out which one was the best price, best location, and chose that based off of my leasing agent's, professional side. And so rents are dropping, vacancies are going up. Oh, and by the way, while rates are rising, cap rates are following. So you've got this perfect storm for values to get crushed. And that's exactly what happened. Now, here we are in 2026 and we're looking at the data. So where are we in the market cycle? Well, when interest rates rose back in 22 and 23, when the Fed raised rates faster than we've seen in a long time, construction stopped. New construction then stopped. And so this huge glut of supply hits the market and is being absorbed. Guess what's to follow with rates being very, very high? If rates are very, very high, it's expensive and even not possible to build these units anymore. Plus, there's gluts of supply. People are like, I'm just going to lose everything. So they stop building. Now what we can see is 2026 until 28, even to 29, there's very limited supply. And if you still have population growth, you still have job growth, because we do in Dallas. We've still got businesses coming in. It's a very business friendly state. And when businesses go there, people follow. And so you're going to see pressure come back and you're going to see rent levels start to increase as this absorption gets completed. And what we can see based on the data, and we're looking at it very clearly, based off of how many new starts are now, there aren't enough units coming online to fill the absorption. So you're going to see vacancy come back down. You're going to see vacancy tighten, which is going to put more pressure on rent. So you can see how the market ebbs and flows just like a wave. And we have to, as real estate investors, position ourselves to ride that next wave. Right? You want to make sure you're at the beginning of the wave. You don't want to be too early because it's still falling. But as we start to see rents come back, as we start to see deal values stabilize, as we start to see rates stabilize, as we start to see the new construction pipeline getting absorbed, there is an opportunistic buying window. There is a buying window opportunity that you are going to see the best deals. And we think we're in it now. We think the window is open from 2026. We think hopefully through 2028 that you'll have this 2-year window of buying opportunity, which we're seeing some of the best deals we've seen. We're buying a 229 unit deal, like I said, when we started here, and we're paying almost $8 million less today than they paid for 5 years ago. So just let that sink in. $8 million discount today compared to what they paid 5 years ago. Again, timing, purchased at the very peak of the market, and the leverage was 0% interest, right? With max leverage. So overpaid, over leveraged, glut of supply comes, rents come down, values come down because cap rates follow, and boom, now the lender says you need to liquidate right now at the most inopportune time, which if you're the buyer, it is the most exciting, the most fun, the most opportunistic, the safest time we've seen in over a decade. And here's what's interesting, you guys. This is the part you have got to hear. You think about Warren Buffett, and he says when there's fear in the market to be greedy, and when people are greedy, be fearful. I've never been in a position where I've had more of a front row seat than that, because you go back to 2021 and the reality was investors had a sense of FOMO. Underwriting was out the window. Rent growth was guaranteed because there was such a long run of doing so well for so long. And so when you see that type of greed, right? When we see that type of FOMO, when you see that type of leverage, it's a telltale sign that the market is overheating. Going back to data, one piece of criteria that I think is worth considering is real estate is a long-term play, right? You're not getting into real estate. We're not getting into real estate. Let me rephrase that. We at Granite Towers are not getting into real estate to flip. That is a very inefficient, very high, heavily taxed, very job-like behavior. That's just the reality of it. If you get in and you get out and you keep getting these capital gains bills, you get taxed and you keep starting over. Whereas if you're buying great real estate, A plus premier location, like the deal we're buying right now in Plano, Texas. It has a really directly across the street. You got Whole Foods, Williams Sonoma, Sephora, La La Land Coffee, Starbucks, Trader Joe's. You've got a school district that's A plus. It's one of the top nationally ranked schools in the country. And then you've got, submarkets where single family homes where it's 800 to $1 million. Heck, within 350 yards of Hathaway, there's $1.5 to $4 million homes. That creates a barrier to entry, right? So if you're a resident and you can't afford an $800 million, $2 million home, you can come into these apartments and sign a lease for $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 a month. And now you've got the same retail, you got the same school, you got the same safety. You've got the same setting and submarket as the person who just paid $2 million for that home. It puts incredible pressure on these premier locations. So the moral of the story, after looking at the data and looking at what's coming based off the current market data, is that we're in this very unique, opportunistic time to be a buyer. And the Rothschild family says it, when there's blood in the street, be buying, even if the blood is your own. We are seeing blood in the streets from people who are selling. We are in a position right now, hunker down and hold. We are not selling anything right now. Hunker down, hold, wait for better times later on. But if you are being forced to sell by your lender, like these buyers are, and you know what you're doing, and you can bring a rinse and repeat value add strategy, deleverage the deal down to 70% fixed debt for 5, 7, or 10 years. Implement a real fundamental value add strategy in the right submarket. Attract the right tenant profile. Now you have the opportunity. Now you're positioned to buy an incredible piece of real estate at a greatly discounted price. Turn that property around because it's likely in a hollowing out period. And I'm going to end with this piece, you guys. When you see a deal hollowing out, what I mean by that is the leverage is so high, the payment is so large that the owner is doing everything they can to survive. And so they keep feeding the bank, which is what's owed, or the bank steps in and makes sure they get paid first. And then they give you the money left over to pay expenses in an order. And then after that, you take care of deferred maintenance, which at this world, if you're over leveraged, there is nothing left for deferred maintenance. So what happens is now you got residents looking around and saying, hey, this place isn't being maintained. This place isn't what it used to be. I'm going to start shopping at the competitors. So it's an opportunity for the new group to come in, deleverage the deal, get that debt out of there, reduce the purchase price, buy an A+ location, come in with a strategic value add strategy, completely reposition the deal, and enjoy the next wave. Real estate's been on for hundreds of years here in the US. If you want to learn more about what we're doing at Granite Towers, comment ready below, and we'll talk to you soon.